Good day. As mentioned before, my name is Mpoma Zawung, and now I'll be taking you through section 4, where we'll be looking at the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the sports events around the world. So if we look at this, and we look at the word pandemic, we have to obviously understand what it means. So what is a pandemic, so that we can understand that what are we dealing with? What is this COVID-19? It's not a epidemic, but it's a pandemic. And if we look at a pandemic is a disease that obviously affects the whole world. It's an outbreak of a disease that affects the whole world. So COVID-19, as discussed in our last section, in section 3, we only looked at South Africa, how COVID-19 has affected South Africa. But now we are going to look at how this COVID-19 as a pandemic, as a disease that is all over the world, has affected the sporting industry. Recently, a research was done, and in all the cities that were supposed to hold major events throughout the year, and it was discovered that in that survey, about 78% of all these major cities really thought that the impact of the COVID-19 will last for a very long time, because obviously a lot of resources went into planning for these major events, because they are international events, and obviously international events need a lot of planning. I mean, these are events that obviously you plan 4 years in advance, 5 years in advance. Hence, just take note that a lot of the countries that do host World Cups, major international events like the Olympic Games, events where people are coming from all sorts of countries, I mean, they take long to prepare. They take 5 years, they take 6 years, because money needs to go in, new stadiums need to be built, events facilities need to be secured, new roads need to be built. I mean, so many other things go into that. However, in saying that, let's look at how all these events and what events have been affected. So through this section, that's what I'll be taking you through. So in this section, we'll be covering page number 15 to page number 23 of the training manual. And in these pages, you look at all the major sporting events in the world that have been affected, and also we'll look at some of the dates that have been scheduled, or which events have been rescheduled, and when they will take place. Just to give you a little bit of information, it has been estimated that throughout the year, and I will probably speak about the amount in dollars, so that we don't get confused with numbers. But it has been estimated that the value of the sporting industry throughout the whole year, in terms of all the sport, about $756 billion is spent, or that's what the value of sport gives internationally to all the sporting codes. So in the face of COVID-19, we can also realize that obviously a lot of jobs, that have been at risk, and not only for sport professionals, but also for, like I've mentioned, retail, sporting services, industries, leagues, events, and not only has this affected the sporting industry, but if we look at the sport business, or the sport as a whole, the travel or the tourism industry has also been affected, because remember, all the aeroplanes now are most of the airlines are not flying out of the country, because they are scared of the spread of the coronavirus. If we take South Africa, for example, we are not allowing any international participation of sports or international flights to come in, except if otherwise granted and permitted by the government itself. So sports as a whole in the world has taken a big toll, because travel is affected, tourism is affected, infrastructure of every city that was supposed to host events has been affected, transportation has been affected, because remember, a lot of the people that do business within the every country, every city, when sport teams come, they get business, because they are able to transport them, they are able to take them to places, there's flights involved, there's commercial income, or let me say that there's some form of value. The media and the broadcasting industry has been affected internationally. Always remember that there are massive deals that are signed, and big contracts that are signed for TV rights with various clubs, international teams, national teams. We can also take into consideration the fact that the food industry, the catering has been affected. So a lot of sport events that have been cancelled have had a massive impact in these sectors that I've just mentioned: the travel, the tourism, the infrastructure, the transportation, the catering, the media, and just to mention those few. And if we look at the professional athletes, obviously they are under pressure, obviously worldwide, sporting wise, to be able to reschedule their training. If you look at for example, the athletes that train, or teams and clubs, some of them go to certain places outside of their own country to try and go and acclimatize. Those who do long distance running will go to America, try to train at the places that obviously are different from where they train. So all those things have been affected. So players now internationally have to even reschedule their trainings while trying to stay fit. Some of them have to train at home. Some of them risk internationally to lose massive sponsorships that they've signed. I mean, if you look at some of the athletes who have signed big deals with Nike, Adidas, Puma, those contracts carry a lot of value. And some of the sponsors cannot be able to afford to just pay an athlete for not being able to be seen. So there's a lot that is happening. I mean, recently I was just watching, Real Madrid, and Hazard was being interviewed, and they asked him that, how has the pandemic really affected you? And he came and he said, look, it's been quite a tough road since the pandemic started, because obviously he had to change his training schedule. And he found it very difficult to maintain a healthy diet, to go training. So by the time he went back to training, and he was measured his skin folds, his fitness test, he was not doing as well as he was doing just before the pandemic. Where on the other side, somebody like Cristiano Ronaldo, in his interview and his test, they found out that actually the pandemic worked well for him. So it works differently from player to player, because he became even fitter during the pandemic. So it has actually affected a lot of sport internationally, both from an individual point of view for the players, teams that have already scheduled to have their preseason trainings in certain countries, various individuals who have decided to obviously go out to other countries to train, sporting events, tournaments, golf tournaments that were supposed to take place. So all these things had to be rescheduled. So in saying that, we can all see that economically, the sports industry took a huge impact, because all the games were cancelled, and obviously with all this, people can now obviously plan for the next year or two to make sure that everything comes on board, normally. Now, one of the things that the pandemic has done is to take away the social cohesion that obviously sports brings from different cultures, from different backgrounds. As we all know, sports makes you to meet people. I've been privileged to have played obviously at a higher level in terms of my playing career in rugby, and I was able to obviously visit other countries, Dubai, I've been able to participate in tournaments around Africa, in various countries, where I obviously learned, met new cultures, met new people, made new friends. So this pandemic has now, at this season, stopped the traveling, which has had a lot of impact on that social cohesion. I mean, when people go to the Olympic Games, fans, they experience a different vibe. It's nice. It's so exciting to be out there. However, we can say that the pandemic also, in terms of how it has affected the whole sporting industry, is that it has brought together many different organizations together. So, for example, if we look at FIFA, they obviously did a campaign with the World Health Organization, where they launched a campaign, or launched it, which is called "Pass the Message to Kick Out Coronavirus." From a football side, kick, and then the coronavirus obviously is something that the World Health Organization is fighting. So they were able to collaborate, or get together to obviously form some sort of like a campaign to try and help to fight the the pandemic, where they obviously the advert was done in 13 different languages. So that's also one of the things that it has done. On a positive side, it has made other organizations to come together and work together. But on the other hand, it has taken away a lot of the economic benefits, the social cohesion that people have from time to time. Now, if we look at other impacts that have taken place internationally, you can see that about more than 15 international sporting codes had to postpone their tournaments and reschedule them. So some of them, obviously, due to the Olympics taking place next year, had to look at beyond 2021 and reschedule some of their competitions to 2022. So this pandemic has really caused a lot of things to be shifted, a lot of things to be restructured. But in saying that, the international bodies obviously understand all the massive responsibility they have towards all their sponsors and people who have invested in these international competitions. So in saying that, we'll look at some of these international or sporting events, and I'll quickly just go through a couple of them with you, so that you can know which ones have been postponed. And as we are speaking, obviously some of them have resumed domestically, but in terms of the international participation, it's still a bit hard for some sporting codes to be able to play. Now, let's look at some of the events that have been postponed or that have been impacted by the coronavirus throughout 2020. So if we look at some of the competitions in terms of the soccer, we can all see that continentally, a lot of competitions had to be rescheduled. We talk about the UEFA Champions League, the Europa Cup, which fortunately were able to be completed after the COVID-19 in those countries came a bit down. So even if we look at South America, the Copa America, which was supposed to take place this year, has been shifted to 2021, so that all the teams can be accommodated. Just quickly to just come in and say that due to all the leagues being rescheduled, a lot of the continental competitions had to be looked at so that leagues can be accommodated domestically, because a lot of the players obviously play in Europe. If you look at South American players, some of the players in Europe play across other countries, so that's why all that had to happen. In South America, also Asia, South American competitions, some of them, the qualifying matches of all the South American competitions in terms of the 2022 World Cup had to be postponed. If you look at the Euro, competition in Europe, has been moved to 2021. The Women's World Cup has been moved to 2021 between January and February. The Olympics and the Paralympics in terms of athletics has also been moved. The World Athletic Championships have also been postponed. In terms of the marathons, we can see a couple of the marathons like the Paris and the Barcelona Marathon had been postponed. Cricket, all the international tours have been postponed. With golf, the PGA has been postponed to August. The rugby, all the Super Rugby during the month of March were called off. All the teams that were obviously in different countries had to fly back, be quarantined. SANZA did cancel the competitions in June, in August, that were supposed to take place. The Six Nations was cancelled with a few games to go. All the June tests were cancelled by World Rugby. France cancelled all their domestic competitions. So all this that has happened has just had an effect of cancellation, postponement. The swimming, their competitions have been postponed to 2021. The World Aquatics Games have been postponed to 2022. Like I've said, obviously because of the Olympics, which will take place later next year. But I have to say that all these federations are really trying, the international federations, to be able to honor all their fixtures, to be able to ensure that they play, they participate, and whatever impact there will be after that, maybe will be discussed by every international body that in their meetings. So in closing this session, I just want to say that even though the COVID-19 pandemic has had a very big impact on international sports, both domestically, continentally, and otherwise, federations, international sporting bodies know that they do have an obligation to carry out every single clause of every contract that they have signed with sponsors. Even around the world, certain players, obviously, in terms of their responsibilities towards their personal sponsors, they also need to carry out those functions. So with the fact that everything has been postponed, we are very confident that through everything be improving throughout the sporting world, every contract, every single event will be honored. And just to say that a lot of the teams that had actually already finalized their final plannings to play outside of their countries had now had to reschedule and obviously have their pre-seasons within their countries or their provinces, as due to certain restrictions that they cannot travel international. I mean, recently we saw the teams in the EPL, in the English Premier League, that after they finished and completed in preparation for their next season, they had to now absorb everything and just be able to play domestically in order to be able to finish their leagues. We recently saw in the UEFA Champions League that all the teams could not play in different venues, home and away games. The matches had to be rescheduled to not a home and away leg, but it had to now turn out into be a knockout competition. So, and everybody had to obviously also come together to play in a bubble, to stay together in one venue in Portugal, so that they can be able to finish the competition. So that's how the COVID-19 has affected a lot of these international participation and competitions. But we are also glad that there's always a plan B or contingency plans that can always be put in place to ensure that these competitions are honored and they can be played. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you will be able to draw up your questions so that we can be able to answer them in our Zoom session when we meet. Thank you.